On the air. How's it going, everybody? This is Tracy, Tracer Ammo for Tracer Ammo TV, and I'm broadcasting to you live. Today is Sunday, the 26th, I think. Yep, Sunday, July 26th, and I'm going to talk to you guys about states today. And that is, well, I'll get into defining that stuff for you in a moment. But first off, I'd like to start with a little bit of an update as to what's been going on with Tracer Ammo TV. And I reviewed the initial videos I made, the episodes 1 and 2, the pilot, and some of the test stuff. And each time I look at it, figure out some stuff I could do to improve it. You might notice that the lighting's a lot better. I'd still like to get something for the back, like maybe a, I don't know, tapestry, kind of tacky, but something like that, some kind of background that isn't a glowing window, you know. So there's still room for improvement there. I've also decided to start doing every 2 weeks instead of just once a week. And the reason for that is I need to make better notes. I need to have a better outline. And so I've taken the time to outline this show pretty well. And I've got all the show notes already set up so that I don't have to go and scramble and try to get them and rewatch the show to find out what I said so that I can do the research to get that shit and put it there. Because I haven't even done that yet, and I probably won't do it for those first 2 episodes. In fact, I'm probably going to rebroadcast those episodes once I get some notes all set up for them and get things figured out a little bit better in the studio kind of thing, because you know, they weren't really that good. So I like the information, I like the idea, but I could probably present it in a far better way. So that's that. That's what has been going on here. Had some cool shows, spun some fire in a couple spots last couple of weeks. So that's awesome. I mean, it's been a good couple of weeks, and I'm actually pretty excited about the information I'm going to present to you guys tonight. The other thing that I'd like to get going, the thing that I have as a link in the show notes, I've already taken care of, is the music I want to share with you guys. And it's nothing new, but hopefully if you haven't heard it, it's new to you. Well, if you haven't heard it, it's new to you. It's this guy from Portland, Doug Appling, I think is his real name, but he goes by Emancipator. And on SoundCloud, he's uploaded a live set, and it's a bunch of the music from, well, I think from a couple of his albums. But it's awesome. If you like bonobo and that sort of like, I don't really know how to describe it. It's electronic, but it's all kind of real instruments too. It's just really cool. Lots of textures. You can kind of tune into the part that you want to spin to. There's like different kind of grooves going on at different times. So I really like it. So if you're interested in hearing some new music, check out the link to that in the show notes, which I will have up because I've already gotten them together. That's why it's been 2 weeks since the last episode. Okay, so now I actually want to get into the meat of the episode. This one isn't necessarily so much about spinning, you know, actual spinning. It's more about states that we go into while we're spinning or while we're practicing or while we're thinking about spinning. And so we all talk about the flow state, and there's been so much discussion about the flow state that everyone's probably pretty familiar with it. So I'm not really going to go into that today. That'll be another episode for another time. But today, I just kind of want to use the flow state as a launching point because we're all kind of familiar with it. And if you go to the flowgenomeproject.co, that's an awesome website. You can get your flow profile and you answer some questions, and they'll tell you what are your flow triggers, how are you most likely to achieve the flow state. And Stephen Kotler and this other guy, there's lots of podcasts you can find information. They got YouTube channel stuff with videos, and it's awesome. They've got a bunch of good stuff. In fact, one of the early blogs I attempted to do, I actually linked to one of their YouTube channels where he's talking about how flow can be addictive. The reason flow can be addictive is because you're going into a state, okay? And now I'm going to read you a definition of what a state is, okay? And this is Tony Robbins' definition of it. And he was trained in NLP, which is neuro-linguistic programming. And that's kind of like not really psychology, maybe like a self-help thing. It's just a bunch of principles about how we perceive the world. And they've, I don't know, made a system out of it that is effective, I guess. But in NLP, they have a thing called a state, like the flow state, but it's more broadly defined. Let me read this to you. It says, a state can be defined as the sum of the millions of neurological processes happening within us, the sum total of our experience at any moment in time. Most of our states happen without any conscious direction on our part. We see something and we respond to it by going into a state. Maybe a resourceful and useful state, or it may be an unresourceful and limiting state. And there's not much that most of us do to control it. Okay, so when he says millions of neurological processes happening within us, neurological processes are the result of like chemical electro shit going on in your brain. It's really complicated. Just look it up if you're interested, but basically there's chemicals in your brain and impulses and shit going on, and the different emotions you might be feeling at any given time are the result of different chemicals, neurotransmitters, hormones, different things going on in your body. So if you're feeling really happy, it's a whole bunch of different chemicals going on than if you're feeling really depressed. Okay. And so one of the things they found about the flow state, the Flow Genome Project, is they've actually gotten the chemicals kind of isolated with brain scans and all this stuff. And it's like serotonin, dopamine, all these different chemicals that are also released during drug use. So that's why the flow state, people say, oh, am I addicted to spinning now? Kinda, because your brain is producing all these chemicals in that particular state that is addictive. But that's the last thing I'm going to say about flow, unless it's a side reference, because that's not what I'm trying to talk about in this episode. Okay, so now that we know generally what a flow state is, generally what a state is, that was the last time. Generally what a state is. So just try to think of a time that you felt really good. Try to think of a time where maybe you had just done a burn and it was perfect and you nailed it and you were excited and you felt great, and if you really focus on that feeling, your brain will start to kind of generate some of those same chemicals that were happening at the time. And it's also, if you start to focus on things where you felt really bad, or maybe if someone had just cut you off and you just start dwelling on it, your body's going to start producing chemicals that will bring you into a state that correlates with your bad feeling. Okay. And when we're in our states, it's really crazy. This is kind of getting back to the NLP thing, but what they say in NLP is that we delete stuff from our experience of the world. We distort stuff from our experience of the world. What we notice in the world is dependent on what our state is. So you might be watching me right now, and if you're entertained and really involved in watching me and you're having a good time, then you might not notice the shit going on around you. But if I go off on a tangent and I start rambling and all this, then maybe you'll start focusing on things that you weren't hearing before, even though they're still in your environment. It's because the stimulus in your environment is kind of influencing your states. Now, the crazy and awesome thing about knowing this kind of shit, that we go into different states due to different stimulus in our environment and stuff, and then knowing that we can almost create those states, that we can create those states ourselves intentionally. And that's kind of what I want to go, that's the direction I want to go with the rest of this kind of discussion here. I want to talk about states that we will, as flow artists or object manipulators or performers even of any variety, dancing, then there are other states aside from the flow state that are beneficial to us. And so one state would be like the student, the learner, the initiate, and it's a good idea to title your states, because that'll be kind of like a way for you to remember it. It'll be easier to get back into that state because you're giving it a reality in your mind, so titling it, like you could say, I'm in initiate mode now. And that's when you're maybe at a festival or something and learning from an instructor. You want to humble yourself and get as much from them as you can without kind of distorting it with what you want or what your intention is or what you expect them to teach you. You don't want to be in that state. You don't want to be in a teacher state when you're trying to learn from someone else. So a good idea would be to what would be an ideal student for you? What would be the ideal student if you were trying to teach someone? And then consider those qualities and then imagine yourself exhibiting those qualities. Like mentally rehearse that. And as you do that, your brain has a hard time determining what's going on in the real world versus what's going on inside you. Like, for example, have you ever been in that half asleep state right before you go to bed and you dream about getting in a fist fight, or your brain drifts or a car wreck or something like that, and your body starts to get a little adrenaline and makes it hard to go to sleep then? Is because your brain is creating the chemicals that you would experience in the thing that you're imagining. So if you start imagining yourself as the ideal student, your brain will start to create those chemicals and put you in that state. So just by imagining what it's like to be what you want to be, you start to almost become that. And just in your state, I mean, if you like, there's actually studies of mental rehearsal where people have done exercises on their finger, and then there was people that just imagined doing exercises on their finger, and the person that didn't even move, didn't even exercise, just imagine it, had like a 25, I can't remember, but something like that, increase in muscular strength, even though they weren't exercising it, relative to the person that was exercising, 25% of the results of the person that was. But so we can change our minds by imagining stuff. We can even change our bodies by imagining stuff. So that's wild, and that's really cool. And getting into a student state or an initiate state, I like to use the word initiate, because I'm going to talk about ritual in a second, and the use of imagination to amplify these states. And initiate kind of goes along with like the ritual, and that's just my personal thing. Like if you want to make it a Zen thing and say you're like the initiate of some Buddhist monk kind of thing, if that's what's up your alley, then title the state for learning whatever you want. So in order to effectively move yourself into a state, you have to break the state that you're in right now. And breaking state would just be something like if you're driving, and then you notice that your shoulders are tense and you notice that you're thinking weird things, you just literally go like, just frenzy, do something strange and something that's not normal for you to do, and it will change your state. And I encourage you to do that right now. I mean, like, even if there's people around, better, because that is something that you are less likely to do. You might do that by yourself in frenzy and shit, but you're going to have to be in a different state to be willing to do it in front of people. And so you're jarring yourself out of the state. And now you can relax your body and focus on the state that you want to be in. Student state, that would be great. Or if you're going to be a teacher and try to teach someone, you want to put yourself into a teacher state. And what would be a good teacher? It's connecting, listening, paying attention, responding to the student instead of just, So it's up to you to kind of create the state that you want and put yourself into it. So I hope you're actually like in a new state now after frenzying like that, because I feel a little bit giddy and happy now. And so you can see that I even changed state a little bit just by that demonstration. So that's cool. Okay. And then I was talking about ritual earlier. So the idea of a ritual is just something, let's think just the stereotypical ritual. You think of like witches or monks in hoods or whatever, carrying the candle, walking and maybe chanting or something, drawing shit on the ground. All those things are symbols, right? And when I say symbol, I mean it very broadly, as in something that is coming into your eyes, ears, nose, smell, something from the environment that comes into your body and through your perceptions and influences the way that you're thinking. That's what I mean when I say symbol. So a red candle might mean something specific to someone. A black candle might mean something different. In reality, it's just a candle, but the meaning that we attach to it is the symbolic quality of it. So when I'm saying make this a ritual, what I'm talking about is warming up. Another thing that will influence state a lot is movement. is moving and getting into your body, like bringing your awareness into your body, like, so use a warm up, because it's good to warm up before you do any kind of physical activity. Even spinning, if it's gentle, you can spin gently as a warm up, but that's different than what I'm talking about here. It's a good idea to warm up. And so the way that I do it, I'll just give you my warm up routine, is joint mobility. And so I try to take every joint that I have, pretty much every joint that I have, and move it, and it's not like strenuous, it's just like neck rolls, in both directions, and then like translating the neck around the shoulders, and then rolling the shoulders, and then it'd be these, and then the elbows, then the spine, then the hips, knees, ankles. And I'm going through and I'm focusing and I'm moving them through their range of motion. You have these cells in your body called proprioceptors. Proprioceptors are what give you balance. They tell you where you are in space relative to the rest of your body. So, when I close my eyes and I touch my nose, the only reason that I can tell where it is because the proprioceptors in my body are familiar with where they are in space relative to the rest of my body. By moving each joint through its range of motion, I'm stimulating and basically recalibrating the proprioceptors. That's good. I mean, that's really helpful as a flow artist or a movement artist or anything like that. So, and it also gets your blood flowing. It lubricates your joints with like interstitial fluid and I forget what the other one is. There's another fluid in your capsules and your joints. I can't remember what it's called right now though, but synovial fluid. So it gets those flowing. It's good. And it also will help you change your state. It'll break your state that you're in now and put you into a new state. And if you're conscious while you're doing these warm-ups, if you're breathing and focusing on your intention of the state that you want to move into, and if you're going to be practicing by yourself, you might want to go into a different state than if you're going to be practicing with a teacher, and so focus, kind of like stern focus is what I go for, like to draw yourself back, because I do get distracted easily. That's just one of my natures, like squirrel, that is something that I have to work on. And putting myself into a state where I can focus, I intend to focus for a long period of time. Like I'm going to practice for an hour, I put my music on and I get into this zone and I practice for an hour, because that's what I'm setting myself up to do. And I'm putting myself into a state where that's not difficult. I'm not putting myself in a state of, I only have a half hour to practice. I have to get in all this stuff. Oh, they're tangled. Now I'm getting frustrated. I could spend the same amount of time in a different state and get 10 times more practice done if I'm in a focused and calm and willing state. If my poi tangles my tethers get tangled, instead of frenzying and getting pissed off, because basically the way that you talk to yourself is a reflection of your state. So if you tell yourself, I only have 20 minutes to practice, I have to get ready, then you're going to feel rushed during your practice. Or if you tell yourself, all right, I get to practice for 20 minutes before I get ready, then that gives you a different view of your practice. So if you get tangled up, it won't be frustrating. You'll be like, oh, I'm tangled, big deal. Practice getting untangled, versus, fuck, I'm wasting time. But your perspective will change depending on the state. So intentionally putting yourself in a patient state, a focused state, while doing your warm-up is going to really help your practice a lot. It's going to make you a better spinner. And I mean, like, moving your body is always good. It's always good. And that actually brings me to the next thing that I want to talk about in this. If you're having a hard time breaking your state, you can use your posture, your body language to change your state. If you are depressed, your body works both ways. And it's crazy. Okay. We'll go into some of this stuff later too, in a different episode, about your energy body and your emotions and how everything kind of correlates, if I'm sitting like this and I have a frown, if I hold this posture for long enough and just frown and keep this look on my face, I'm going to have a hard time feeling really happy, but if I'm sitting up and I'm happy and I'm smiling and my eyes are open and I'm moving and I'm very enthusiastic, I start to feel that becomes a sincere thing in me. I become enthusiastic and I become excited, and so that's your body posture influencing the way that you feel. And so if you're having a hard time or if you're nervous before a show, this will be in the show notes, is power poses, just pose, like you're a champion, you're proud, you feel good, you know what I mean? You're, pose. And it feels silly. That'll make you smile because you feel silly. But isn't that evidence of your state changing already? Smiling when you didn't want to before. So try that. Experiment with the poses too. Not all body postures or negative states are necessarily bad as a performer either. And that's kind of where I want to finish this up with the whole state thing. It's like the last real application of using your state. And this gets into some weird stuff, but it's, when I say weird, I mean a little esoteric. And I'm pretty confident that a lot of the people in the poi community, hopefully you guys watching, are willing to suspend your disbelief for a moment as I tell you this stuff and roll with me as we get into this weirder shit. Okay, I got some links. There's a guy, David Snyder. I got a link and I'll send you to him. And then he also dropped some references like Heart Math Institute and stuff. And so that's a really cool link. But basically, and we'll get back to the NLP thing. NLP, they have this thing called rapport. And this is it's villainized in a way because a lot of salespeople use NLP. And it has such a wide range of application. Car salesman is the shitty brand that NLP gets sometimes because in sales, people will actually teach you this kind of shit. Like I had to do calls and shit, and they would give us these kind of workshop shit. But the idea is you mirror, the body language of someone else, and that's kind of like the posture thing. If you're mirroring someone's body language, you're going to start to feel like they feel, right? And so they're more likely to, that's called building a rapport. You use similar words that they use, and it will get them to feel more comfortable with you. They'll instantly start to feel more comfortable with you, or at least that's the idea in NLP. And from the sales angle, if they're more comfortable with you, then they're more willing to listen to you and you suggest they buy something. So it's kind of sleazy on that end. But in the link, David Snyder demonstrates using body posture to, and he drops the heart math. It's called coherence. They call it rapport in NLP. They call it coherence in heart math. But the idea is that your nervous system will sync with the person that you're building rapport with. And if you are synced with someone, think about this, okay? Here's an example of it. If you've ever been in a car, on a long car ride with someone, and you're both sitting in a similar posture, and that person has been quiet for a while, and their mood starts to change, and you can feel it. What's happening there? Well, you guys are synced up. Their nervous system is experiencing something. Your nervous system starts to mirror it, whether you're consciously aware of it or not, right? And so that's because you're in strong rapport with them and you're communicating in a subconscious way. A lot of it has to do, most communication is with body language, tonal expressions, not the words that we say, but the way that we say them. And so it's important to remember all of this as a performer, okay? Because it's not what you want people to feel when you're in rapport with them that they feel. It's what you feel. And so if we were in solid rapport and I wanted you to feel happy, I would have to feel happy in me in connection to you. I can only influence myself, and then your body will not accidentally, but just naturally, it will happen no matter what. It will link up with me. And then I can influence you by creating feelings in myself. Okay. So I recommend you check out the link. David Snyder, he describes it a lot better than I do, and he demonstrates it. It's pretty cool. But the reason I'm telling you all this is because in the beginning of this episode, I told you about how to create a state by breaking the one that you're in, freaking out, doing some warm-ups, moving around, and then finding and focusing on the state that you want to create in yourself. Well, if you're performing to a piece of music, you have this cool thing going on with the audience, right? And they're all looking at you. The people in the audience are paying attention to you. That creates rapport. People are giving them the people in the audience are willingly giving you their attention. They want that connection with you. So, actually, I wrote down a quote. So this is from a guy, Lee Strasberg, and he's the founder of the Actor Studio. I quoted this from a New York Times article, and he's talking about actors, but in the article, I'm going to link to it too. In the article, they talk about how stage fright, basically, and overcoming stage fright, and how to interact with your audience. And the quote that I think is important to this particular episode is this: the actor manipulates the audience by being aware of it and responding to it as you do to a partner. They're giving you their attention. You have to give them your attention back. And you link. You guys will synchronize. You and the audience will synchronize. And there's this crazy thing that happens with groups of people. They kind of become one, like mass hysteria and things like that. There's like a bunch of books about it. LibriVox.com. You can look on there. I can't remember the name of the book right now. This is one of the ones that I didn't plan. I'm just throwing in there, so it probably won't be in the show notes. But it's like mass hysteria and the delusions of crowds or something like that. You can listen to it for free online. But they talk about that, how crowds become kind of like this one weird entity. If you establish rapport with a crowd, then you can create a state in yourself and they'll feel it. So think about how awesome that is for being a performer. If you want to create a powerful performance, or if you want to create a sense of awe, if you want to create, like fright, like they're worried for you because you're doing dangerous stuff, you have to be in that state yourself. You have to, and it's not like don't actually be afraid, but what does it feel like in your body to be afraid? What does it feel like? Kind of like butterflies in your stomach, maybe a little anxiety in your jaw, So create that state in yourself, like really, really kind of, this is, okay, earlier in the episode I said ritual, and I kind of got sidetracked about that. The reason that I was saying ritual is because each one of those things, the incense, the warm-up, the whatever you do, the music you put on, the way that you start your spin practice, if you consistently do that while in a specific state, they will anchor. That's like Pavlov's dog, right? So the state will anchor, and by going through the motions of the ritual, it will pull the state up for you. So they become linked. And that's why I was suggesting calling it a ritual, naming the state and all that stuff, is because that's an anchor. And to continue with that tangent, this is just a cool thing. You got to be kind of careful with it, but performer state, come up with your ideal performer state and focus on it, and take some time, get a wet towel, and soak your poi or your prop or whatever, and take some time, you can look it up, NLP, and it's called the Circle of Excellence, and it kind of shows you how to develop an anchor state. But basically, you just imagine a circle on the ground, you stand outside of it, and you imagine your perfect self in the circle, your perfect performer self inside the circle, all the details that you can think of, what it would feel like, what it tastes like, what it smells like, everything. The more physical senses you can get activated in your imagination for what you want, the more effective this will be. Then you step into that circle, be in that space, and while you're in there and you're feeling it, and you can even try to double the feeling again, and really until you are at the peak state that you can be in, then light up. While the flame's lit, hold that, and then put the flames out, do it again, And it's just like Pavlov, ringing the bell, feeding the dogs. Eventually, you won't have to go through the ritual of creating the perfect state in front of you and stepping into it. When you light up, that state will activate, right? So the reason I say be careful about that is because if you are doing that with the plans on being a terrifying horror spinner for Halloween, and you condition the state to be like as evil and demonic looking as you can while you perform, and then you go to a sweet 16 birthday, you don't want your instinct to be demoniacal frenzy spinning when there's a bunch of little girls, so when you maybe just focus on having the best possible performance and focus on being in a state that is capable of quickly creating other states and projecting them, you know what I mean? And so that's just a cool thing, to side note. But shit. Oh man, I forgot what I was even doing. Okay, yeah. Well, so all of that. I do. Okay, so this is kind of funny. All right, I'm going to read you. Well, I won't read it to you, but basically, if you're in a particular state and someone interrupts you, and you start going, and that breaks your state, and then you come back to the state you were before, but you're in a new state, it's difficult to remember what you were talking about. That just happened to me, So that's another cool example of states. So my state changed from when I was talking about interacting with the audience, and then when I went over to anchors again. Somehow those two were connected, but I don't really remember where I was going with it. But just to review the audience stuff, and maybe this will drum up the idea, you need to put yourself into the state that you want them to experience, and then you have to connect with them. They're trying to connect with you. You have to connect with them willingly. And then once you establish the connection, feel the state that you want them to experience. Oh, okay, yeah. And I remember the last thing I wanted to say is a lot of times the reason I went to the anchoring stuff is because this is something you'll see a lot of spinners do. When they light up, they've anchored the nervous state, and so, okay, maybe this has happened to you before. You have 1,000 moves that you've practiced, 1,000, you can't even do them all in one burn, but you end up doing the same 15 moves every single time you light up, the first or second time you light up. Generally by the third time you're used to it and you can start playing and experimenting. But for me, I find that like the first 2 times I light up, I go in robot mode, and do the same moves every time. That's because I have programmed that state, right, into my performance state when I light up versus my flow friends state when I light up versus my like meditation burns when I light up. Each one has a different effect. And when I'm spinning for other spinners, I get nervous, it's something that I need to work on, but I feel like an audience, I don't get nervous in front of an audience because I'm fucking with fire. That freaks people out. No one's judging my technical abilities. When you spin for other spinners, it's a little more nerve-wracking because they're actually like capable of critiquing you because they know what is clean and what isn't. And so I get into that particular, my power moves, the moves that I do and I know and I'm confident with. The first couple times I light up around other spinners, I tend to stick with my power moves. I could take the time to, change that state, but it's one of those things where when you're in a group of people and it's difficult to put yourself through that, to circle the excellence, how you want to be. So that's something I'm going to work on, and it might be interesting for you to reflect on what conditions around your environment affect the way that you spin and recognize that as the result of a different state. I was hanging out with my buddy. We were spinning not this Friday, but the previous Friday. And I noticed that about him when he was spinning. The different spinners were going and the audience had some pretty good, everyone was paying attention. The audience was kind of coming and going because we were doing like spinning out in the alley on the street, and so it would ebb and flow. And I noticed when he lit up, people stopped paying attention. He's a great spinner. He has great technical skills and everything, but he wasn't captivating them. And so I asked him, what was going on in your head? Like, what were you feeling? And he was like, I'm trying to ignore the audience because instead of the stage fright thing, he was trying to just pretend they weren't there and spin for himself. And the audience felt that. And so they didn't pay attention to him because he was giving them that feeling because they started paying attention to him and he was aware of them, but he wanted to ignore them so that he could feel confident. But they felt that. And so they started ignoring him. So, I mean, it's really strange to pay attention to this state stuff in yourself and to pay attention to it in other people and just watch the way the phenomenon works, like during shows and stuff where you're not performing even, it's crazy. And I feel like it comes across in video, and you tell me, because if you've watched this and you were capable of seeing my state changing and you were maybe more interested in what I was saying during higher, more energetic states, or like when I was getting confused and kind of serious and meandering, you may have been less likely to be engaged, So it's crazy. I don't know. That's a lot of stuff. So basically, now you know what a state is. There are states other than the flow state that are beneficial to us. There's like the teacher state, the learner state, the performer state, and then emotional states that we want to project onto the audience. So those are different things that we can use states for. Let's also remember anchoring. Like we can anchor, in a costume, use a costume as an anchor. We could use lighting up as an anchor. We could use the audience as an anchor, our environment. That's another thing is it's a consistent practice environment is good. Just like a consistent work environment is good. When you get into an environment that you tend to spend a lot of time in a specific state in that environment, then that environment will help induce the state in you. So find a spot that you like to practice and practice there consistently. Get into your state and go there. And it will help you maintain that state while you're there in the long run. So, this is a lot of crazy stuff. And if you have any questions about this, I'm more than happy to give references, links, any of that stuff. If you want more information, just let me know. I'm happy to talk about it. I love this kind of stuff. I know this wasn't directly related to any particular prop, but just as a performer, I think this relates really well across the board. So that's really it for this episode. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'm hoping you enjoy it. It's going to just keep getting better. I got some lighting now, I got lighting. I'm going to be improving things. I've got show notes going on, and I'll be outletting more stuff too. I really like to talk about the psychology and philosophy and symbol stuff. And so expect to see some more episodes of that sort of stuff coming up too. I also am completely intrigued by flow state, especially now with all the research that the Flow Genome Project is doing. And it's great because I'm recognizing how I get into flow states other than through spinning, and so that's a lot of fun for me. And I'll probably end up discussing that. I've also got some plans to discuss things for how cross-training with props, different moves work on different props and all that stuff. So lots of good stuff coming up, lots of good stuff. I'll see you in 2 weeks. And thanks for tuning in, guys. If you enjoyed this, I would love it if you would leave me some comments or share the video if you think that someone else will get something out of it. If there's stuff that you'd like to see more of or things that I do that annoy you, let me know so I can stop doing those and continue to make these videos better and better. So until next time, I'm Tracy out. I don't know if that worked, but okay. Hopefully, Tracy ran all out. Oh man, see, I still got a lot of work to do on this. All right, maybe this time